Welcome to the Online Success Journey podcast, your opportunity to discover and learn from entrepreneurs like yourself. This is not your typical podcast, but a place where you can get the real story and find out how real people encounter speed bumps and detours, but journey through to find success. Now here's your host for the Online Success Journey podcast, Patience.
Hello everyone and welcome to Online Success Journey. This is episode 68. Are you ready to join the clan? Today we have Yann Ilunga, a podcaster and a podcasting consultant who helps entrepreneurs, business owners and creatives leverage the power of podcasting and funnels to build authority. Hello Yann.
Hi Patience, how are you doing?
I'm great. I know the clan here is anxious to hear your story, so let's get started with the basics. Can you tell my clan a little bit about your background, what you did before you started your online business? Take us right up to the last job or business before you were online.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. And as people can tell, I have a funny accent. I call it macaroni accent, and that's because English is not my mother tongue. Italian is, and I'm originally from the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, so that's where I come from, and obviously I use English all the time in my personal and professional life, but that's not my mother tongue. And to answer your question, Patience, I've done a few things, and I've been living in Finland for about 5 years. And I did my master's studies here. I studied media and global communication was my major. And then the last job I had before I really started online seriously was a journalist. I was working for an English language newspaper here in Helsinki, Finland.
Wow. What made you leave journalism and you start podcasting?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, as a podcaster, and content creator, I really don't feel that much of a difference with what I was doing earlier, in the sense that I still create content, both written and audio. I still have some kind of a schedule and editorial calendar. So it's not a big difference. I mean, there were many different reasons why I wanted to do what I did. And one of those was that I liked my job, but sometimes there were certain things that were really frustrating in the way the office was ran by the editors and things like that. So many things happened that kind of made me question the work environment a little bit. And then, I decided to take the leap.
Wow. Okay. What is the most dangerous belief an online entrepreneur can have?
I think the most dangerous, there are quite a few without a doubt, but personally, and this is something I see also when I do coaching work quite a bit, is that, and this is something we all have, Patience, especially when we're starting out something. So it can be when we start a new podcast, or we start an entire business, or we start with a blog or a YouTube channel. What we tend to do is we look for people to follow, to learn from, to get inspired by, which is great. But then we tend to want to get the same results as them. But there is a problem that I could now tell you, Patience, if you do this thing, let's say if you do this on Instagram, you're going to get great results. And if you do the exact same thing, maybe for you it doesn't work. Why? Is because you and I may be focusing on different types of audiences. There are many different reasons. So I usually, when I want to learn something, Patience, I usually follow what I called my 3 T's. Would you like me to tell you what those are?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my first T stands for test. So whenever I get an advice, and it can be by reading a book or listening to a podcast like yours, watching a webinar, attending a conference, it doesn't really matter. Whenever I get a new strategy or a new tool and I get really excited about, I'm like, okay, the first thing I have to do is test it to see if that strategy works for me, for my business, for my podcast, for my blog, whatever the case may be. So the first T is test. The second T is track. So the only way to know if something is working or not is to keep track of things. So if you try a strategy to increase the number of email list subscribers, for example, you should give yourself a window of time. And, the window of time shouldn't be like 1 week, because many things that we do as entrepreneurs take time. So you should give yourself a reasonable window of time and then track. So keep an eye on what's happening before you implemented the strategy, after you implemented the strategy. And the third and final T, patience, stands for tweak. So once we have tested something, we have kept track of the things, we have the data that speaks, and we know whether we should tweak it, so change something, or just move on because that strategy really didn't work for us. So those are my 3 T's, and I really, really follow them for learning anything when it comes to online business, podcasting, content marketing.
Wow. Can I take you back to your second T? When
Yeah,
you say
sure.
when you say we should track, how long should we track? You said the time frame. What
Yeah,
are you
well,
talking about? 6 months, a year?
Well, it really, it really depends. I personally think that it really depends, because certain types of tests, you may already get results relatively quickly. So, for example, if you want to test, let's say you offer something on your homepage. Let's say you have a blog about traveling, for example, and you're offering an ebook for people who sign up for your email list. And you have an idea for a different type of, let's say you say, okay, I offer an ebook. What if I try to offer the same content, but in a different form, let's say video? And you know that you already have a lot of traffic that comes to your homepage. In that case, 2 weeks, a month could be enough. So you would say, for example, okay, for the first 2 weeks, I put the video instead of the ebook. So I change the offering a little bit and I see what happens. And then in the final 2 weeks, I put the ebook back and see how the change impacts. But if one doesn't have a lot of traffic, for example, then doing something like this over a 2 week or 4 week window of time may not be ideal. So I don't think there is a real answer in terms of what's a good window of time. It depends from different factors. But in my opinion, that basically I would say that the more, again, depending on what you want to test, but the quicker things move. So, for example, the higher the web traffic you have, or the higher the number of downloads your podcast gets, or whatever, the higher the numbers, the shorter the window of time can be. But again, make sure to give yourself a window of time that makes sense. So I would say, if I were to give you an advice, I would say don't try to experiment with anything below 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks plus, it's a good window of time for trying to experiment with different things.
Wow. Okay. How can you tell us how to create an automated system to generate new leads and increase our sales?
Yeah,
Does
absolutely.
this work for beginners, or it's just for people like you who are already in advanced?
No, yeah, absolutely. It works for everybody. And the thing is that, and this doesn't really matter, patient, to tell you the truth, kind of what our level is, because I work with people who are pretty influential in their space. But then I noticed that, okay, they may have, not even an email list or things like that. So it doesn't really matter where one is in his or her entrepreneurial journey. So what is a sales funnel? A sales funnel, as you said, is a system that allows us to generate new leads, so new email list subscribers and sales, pretty much on autopilot. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't do anything and everything happens, because again, there are different factors that go into that. For example, when it comes to signing up for an email list, there are different factors that make a person sign up or not. So what is the offer? Is it about a topic I'm interested in? Okay, yes. What type of content is it? Is it an ebook, an infographic, an audio recording, a video? What is that? And then what are the benefits I'm gonna get? Do I already know those things, or the things I will get are things that are useful for me? So these are just a couple of things to really make it clear that there are different reasons why we decide to do A rather than do B. Now, there are different types of sales funnels, and things can get quite complicated, but they don't have to be really. And the way, if we were to take a magnifying lens, patients, a sales funnel usually has a few components. We have the entry level, which is the free thing we give in exchange for people's email and address. And as I said, the free thing can almost be anything really. A free ebook, a video, an audio. It doesn't really matter. There are, different people, different niches, different audiences have different needs, and the content may be presented in different ways. So we have the lead magnet, is called in more technical terms. And then we have an automated email sequence. And basically what that does is when somebody signs up for the free resource, the email service we use automatically puts the person into a funnel. And if our funnel is made of 5 emails that are sent on a daily basis, for the next 5 days, the person is going to get an email a day. And the idea of those emails, so of the email sequence, is that we provide additional value to what the ebook or the free video that we offer at the beginning do give people. So we build on that. We provide additional value. We dive deeper in the topic or something like that. Or if we give an ebook that is like 5 hacks to become a world traveler, for example, in our email sequence, we could share a couple of additional bonus hacks or something like that. And then what the email sequence does, not only provides people with value, but also introduces them to our premium offer. So the premium offer is the third and final component of a funnel. And just like for the lead magnet, the premium offer can, again, be almost anything. It can be somebody selling coaching services. It can be somebody selling access to a membership site, access to an online course, somebody selling a book, somebody selling access to a digital conference. But the idea is that we don't say to people, hey, here's my book, buy now, because nobody cares about that. The idea is that we have our lead magnet that helps people solve a problem. And then we have our email sequence that provides people with additional value and touches upon a couple of new pain points. And then we introduce our premium offer as the solution to those problems. And obviously, in order to our sales funnels to work, I said there are many things that, many pieces of the puzzle, but a very important one is that there has to be a connection between our lead magnet, the email sequence and its content, and then the premium offer. Because if we offer a free ebook about traveling, and then our premium offer is our online course about podcasting, for example, people are going to be like, okay, wait a second. You were talking about traveling and now you talk about podcasting. So to recap, patients, we have 3 components. One is a free resource, one is an automated email sequence, and almost any email service provider today allows us to create those emails that then are sent automatically. The one I personally use and I really like is called Active Campaign. And I really like it because, first of all, is wallet friendly. So it's very inexpensive, which I think is important, especially when one is starting out to try to keep the costs low. And then it's very good because it allows you to do both beginner things, as simple as manually sending a newsletter, as well as more advanced stuff. So if one starts out and at some point, in a few months or something like that, they need additional features, they probably will find them. So we have our free resource, the email sequence with a tool like ActiveCampaign, and then finally our premium offer, so a product or service that we are selling.
Wow. Oh, it is a really big process. It's not really that easy. As you mentioned, it's just easy.
Well, no, because as I said, there are people who have sales funnels that I was talking with somebody the other day, told me that they have a sales funnel with 18 steps.
Hey, that's that's
Talking
a bit
about
scary.
complicated. Yeah, exactly. So you see, obviously, so I mentioned 3 steps, and every step takes some time to be built. But then the idea is that a sales funnels is something that once we have our premium offer that is ready, we have written our emails, we have set up the email sequence, and then we have our lead magnet and all the pieces of the puzzle are connected. Then our job is to direct people into the funnel. So for example, if we create content on a blog, we can create free content and offer our ebook that again is related to that, and invite people to sign up. And once somebody signs up, everything else that happens after, we don't have to worry about that because we have already put in the work at the beginning and everything happens on autopilot.
Wow. Okay. And Yann, you've been in business for a while now. So let's put man aside. How do you know that you are really a successful podcaster?
That's a good question. I think that, and obviously this really depends from the personality, but Patience, I consider myself a very normal person, a normal podcaster. Obviously, sure, I'm a podcasting expert for the fact that I've been doing it for some time. I work with people who want to start a podcast and things like that. But really, I think that what makes one successful is the definition of success. So if for you success is being a millionaire, then you may be doing many things that in other people's eyes are very, very successful, are synonym of success. But for you personally, you may even feel like a failure because you aren't making the millions you want to make. So for example, Patience, even in my business, the reason why I started what I do is not because I wanted to be a millionaire. It's because I wanted to have the freedom to really work in the way I wanted to work. I wanted really to do something that for me was meaningful and still is meaningful today. So for everybody listening, I would say that the biggest advice I can give when it comes to success is to try to be brutally honest and just forget about everybody else's definition of success and think about what success really is for me. So if somebody is listening to you and I, Patience, and they are starting out, for them success may be, okay, be able to host my podcast or be able to have a website that is online, that looks good, that attracts people I want to talk to. Or if it's in monetary terms, for somebody starting out, being successful, maybe, okay, making my first $100 online. So I think it's really success. The way I approach success, Patience, I think that it really depends from the person. So, sure, in some people's eyes, I can be like, you're so successful. And, other people's eyes, I can be like, okay, this guy is a nobody. So I think that for everybody listening, you shouldn't look at other people to identify what success really means, but you should really look into yourself and see what success looks like for you.
Okay. So how can we unlock podcasting for business and the mindset and turn the podcast into actual business asset? How are we going to do that?
Do you mean as a host, as a guest, both?
Both, praise.
All right. So
Okay.
I can start maybe as the host.
Yes.
So I think that the first thing to really start to leverage a podcast as a business asset is to understand. Well, first of all, you have to be an entrepreneur and wanted to podcast for business purposes. Because if you want to host a podcast for as a passion thing, there is nothing wrong with that. But then you may have kind of a different approach compared to somebody who uses podcasting as a business asset. So that now that we got that out of the way, you have to look at your overall business picture, at what your business looks like. If you don't have a business, maybe you're building one right now, then ask yourself, if I were to have a business, or if the business I'm building was ready today, what purpose would my podcast serve? And there are different goals, patients. And I always say that my advice when it comes to goals is and this is a big mistake because we tend to try to want to do everything. And it ties into what we were talking about earlier about, testing things and how to know if something is working. My advice is to really focus on one goal at a time. So, for example, a podcast can be used as a tool for position ourselves as an authority. So if we always talk about a specific topic, like in my case, for example, with my new show, The Podcaster Lab, is a show where I talk about podcasting in every single episode. So by me talking about podcasting episode after episode, week after week, month after month, I really start to become not only more knowledgeable in when it comes to podcasting, but I also start to really position myself as an expert because that really becomes my bread and butter. So I start to know what are the questions people often ask when they start out, questions seasoned podcasters may have, and things like that. So position oneself as an expert could be a goal. Another goal could be, okay, I want to network with people in my industry. So I am going to use my podcast. I'm going to interview people in my industry. That's one goal. Another goal could be, okay, I know that having an email list is important. I'm going to use my podcast as a tool to grow my email list. Or you could say, okay, I have this course and I want my podcast to be a tool that attracts my ideal client and really makes them interested into my course. So do you want me to go a little bit deeper in these points?
Please give us a tips, a refresher. Just give us a little window.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that. So,
Okay.
For example, obviously, don't get me wrong. As I said, building an email is very important. But if your number one goal when you start out is network with people, then you should start and focus on your networking skills. And then you will focus on, for example, your email list later on. Because I think that when entering podcasting, especially if it's something one does for the first time, and especially if somebody doesn't have any previous experience in front of a microphone or conducting interviews, if one hosts an interview-based podcast, then the learning curve, and I know patients, you can attest to this, there is some time that goes into learning how the microphone works, how to start an interview with an introduction, all these kind of things, right?
Yes.
So what I always say to people when they start out is, instead of saying, well, yeah, I want to interview people, I want to network, and I want to grow my email list, but I also want to make money, I'm like, wait. Mm-hmm. First of all, it takes time to really become comfortable in front of the microphone, really feel not afraid to, if you have a funny accent like mine, you don't have any problem using it. It takes time, it takes training, it takes making mistakes, it takes recording many episodes. So that's something that in itself is quite a lot of work. So if on top of that, we try to do 10 other things, we're going to feel, first of all, really overwhelmed. And also we're going to feel like, okay, I'm not going anywhere because you're trying to achieve 5, 6 different things at the same time. So my advice is to try to identify what that one goal is and set yourself that goal to really focus on that goal, not for the next month or two, because as you and I, Patience, were talking before we started this interview, podcasting, sometimes it may really take some time before some of your ideal listeners find out about you. It may even take 6 months or more. So my advice would be set yourself a good period of time. It can be 9 months, it can be a year, where you really, number one, focus on becoming comfortable or feeling comfortable being a podcaster. And number two, you start to work on that one goal. So if your goal is building your email list, then it's really important that every single episode or most of the episodes you publish and the show notes and everything that goes around your podcast is built in a strategic way. So it's built with the purpose of having people sign up for your email list. So for me, for example, Patience, when I started out for the 360 Entrepreneur podcast, so my first podcast in the entrepreneurial space, I didn't have a downloadable resource for every episode because email list building wasn't my number one goal. My number one goal was to network with people. So in certain episodes, I had something to download. In other episodes, I didn't have something to download. And that really depends. I have a client, for example, who recently launched her show, and she said, I really, really, really want to build my list. Mm-hmm. She has a downloadable resource for every single episode she releases, no exceptions.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you see that's already a completely different approach compared to somebody who may say, okay, I just want a podcast to network, which is, and there isn't anything wrong with that kind of approach. There isn't any right or wrong approach. There is just picking a goal and then strategically leverage your podcast to go in that direction. And obviously, the goal you pick also then has an impact on your entire show. Because if you want to network with people, but you don't want to do interviews, maybe hosting a podcast isn't the best way to go about it. So this is some of the things to think about when it comes to the host. And obviously, we have talked about funnels a moment ago. Mm-hmm. So once you have a funnel, if you want to build your list, think about how you can connect the free resource you give to the funnel you have, or if you have to build a different funnel so that then you really build an entire system. Now, would you like me, Patient, to take a moment and to talk about from the guest perspective?
Yes, give us a briefly and see how the guest can benefit.
Okay, so from the guest perspective, it is a bit of a similar thing. So first of all, the learning curve isn't as difficult for the host because typically you just have to have some kind of microphone, have a tool like Skype, an internet connection, and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about show notes. The host does that, so you have an advantage. Now, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. The first one is, why do I want to be interviewed? So is it, again, to establish your credibility as an expert? Is it because you want to network with people? Is it because you want to promote a specific product or service? So once you've identified that, the next question you have to ask yourself is, who is my ideal listener? And what type of podcasts is he or she listening to? And a big mistake, Patience, many people make is that, especially when it comes to approaching podcasting as a guest, they think, I have to go after the quote unquote big podcasts because they get thousands of downloads. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to get exposure, blah, blah, blah. It isn't necessarily true if your ideal listener isn't listening to those type of podcasts. In fact, I had a podcast interview where I was interviewed for 33 minutes, and I talked with my friend Jessica Rhodes, that's her name. We talked with her because we were curious. So a few months after, we were talking about this, and she checked the stats, and basically there was something that happened. So I was promoting my virtual summit on her podcast, and the interview was 30 minutes long. There were less than 100 downloads, and try to guess how much money I made in 48 hours because of that individual episode when there were less than 100 downloads. Try to guess.
Maybe it depends how much was the product.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'll give you a hint. It was 97 at that time.
Did you get 100? 500?
Yeah, exactly. You're right on the money. Yeah. That's exactly. So that shows that for me, for some, and that's of course it's subjective, but for me, I was like, hey, I spent 30 minutes of my time. I made $500. It's not bad. But why did that happen? Is because I was talking exactly to the people who the summit was planned for. So again, ask yourself, what do you want to do? And if you're a coach, for example, and you would like to attract clients, then you have to make sure that you are featured on podcasts that your ideal clients listen to. But there is a big thing. Being interviewed, or if the host accepts to interview you, you shouldn't be like, oh, okay, it's done. Because it's not about selling, really. It's about providing value. So in my case, for example, with Jessica patient, we talked about podcasting, building a community and things like that. And then we mentioned the virtual summit, because the summit was the next step to the conversation. So you should ask yourself, what is the next step I would like a person to take after they listen to the interview? And if you're objective, if you're honest, the next step may not be, okay, give me your credit card and become a client. No, the next step may be, okay, now I've kind of introduced myself to you. The next step is, hey, check out my website, join my email list, or listen to some of my podcasts so that you start to get to know me a little bit better. Or, hey, sign up for this free webinar I'm hosting next week or next month. So once you know exactly what you want to do, if that has to do with growing your email list or selling, that's where the sales funnels we talked about, patients, a moment ago, come into the conversation. And you can see that it's really a full circle, because it is really a powerful asset. So in the case of a sales funnels and being a podcast guest, my advice is think about what are the topics, or what is the topic you often talk about, and then create one or a few downloadable resources that have to do with that topic. So if you want really to be featured on podcasts to grow your email list all the time, that's the way to go about it. Create a few downloadable resources, and then depending on the specific topic or subtopic, if that topic is being discussed during the conversation, you can say, hey, by the way, I've created a free ebook that you can get at this link, and that's the next step to what patients and I are talking about. Or there you find more in-depth information on what we have talked about. And if it's okay with you, patients, can I show everybody here how to do that with my words? So for example, here with you, we have talked about sales funnels a little bit. And it's a topic that, as we said, it takes some time to take in. It takes some time to think about, it sounds like an interesting concept, but how could I have one for my business? So I actually have a free email course that is called Funnels 101. So if you go to my website, yannilunga.com, So that's YANNILUNGA.com/funnel. You can sign up there. It's a completely free email course, as I said, and you learn more about funnels. So you see, patients, what I just did here is that you and I have talked about sales funnels a couple of times. The topic came up. So it makes sense for me to bring up the free course. In fact, I really believe that I would be doing your clan a disservice by not mentioning the course or or an ebook or a webinar, whatever the resource may be, because I really want to help people. And if somebody isn't interested, great, that's not the resource for them. If a person checks out the course and doesn't like it, no problem. But I really want to focus on the people I know could benefit from the free course. So if you're a guest on a podcast or a series of podcasts, think about those things. And obviously, if your goal is to, I would like to sell my course, then you should give people, you can go about it a couple of ways. You can have a sales funnels. So you offer a free resource, and then you have the email sequence as we talked about, and then you have the pitch that happens on autopilot. Or in some cases, you can be really upfront and make an exclusive bonus that is available, or discount that is available only for the listeners. So to really give them the kind of the incentive to go and buy right now. But personally, I think that it's more about providing value and building their relationship first, especially if you're being exposed to a brand new audience. So patients, those are some of the things we can do to start to look at podcasts more as a business asset, as both host, guest.
Wow. Where do we find you?
Now
we have heard a lot of funnels, sales, the test, the tricks. So where do we find you?
Well, I'm pretty much anywhere, but I think the best place to find me is my website. So as I mentioned, is yannilunga.com. And I personally reply to every single email that I get. So if somebody signs up for the funnels course and they have questions or anything like that, they can just hit reply to the email they get. Sure, those are automated emails, because the email course is sent automatically. But I do see if somebody replies and has questions, and I'm always happy to hear from people. So that's the best place to get in touch with me. And if somebody is interested in podcasting, I also have a fun Facebook group where we talk about podcasting. We have people from different parts of the world at different moments or different spots of their podcasting journey. So people who are just starting out, people a little bit more advanced. And also there, I'm always happy when I get questions, and we really talk about podcasting at 360 degrees, whether that's the gear, trying something completely new, how to get your first guest. And two, if you would like to join the Facebook group, you can go to my website, so yannilunga.com, and then you add /community. So yannilunga.com/community, and then you will be redirected to the Facebook page. So you just click to join, and then I'll accept you as soon as possible. And I'm really looking forward to seeing anybody who's interested in podcasting into the group, and the group is called Podcast Growth Mastermind.
Wow, good stuff, Yann. Okay, so clan, there will be more from Yann in a moment. If you are finding Yann's journey interesting and you are ready to hear more, come and listen to the version of the interview at onlinesuccessjourney.com. If you're already at onlinesuccessjourney.com, click part 2, Yann's journey, and you'll get lots and lots of tips how to start as a podcaster, as a host. And don't forget, you can access all other online journey interview podcasts on the site as well. So that's a wrap, clan. Remember, success is a journey. Patience and Yann, join us in part 2 at Online Success Journey.
This is not the end of the journey. We hope you've enjoyed listening to part 1 and want to be sure you know there is a second part to this and every journey podcast at onlinesuccessjourney.com. filled with even more success tips, uplifting stories, and even a bit of fun. There are dozens of episodes only available to the members of the Online Success Journey Clan. Check out the website and click on Join the Clan for more information. Patience would like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and she has a free audio gift for you at her website. Go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for instant access to this gift. Of course, you know that listening to the journeys of others helps each of us chart our own path. So make sure you're subscribed to be notified as each new interview is posted. There are so many ways to stay connected to the Online Success Journey and to listen in. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we appreciate your help in telling others. One of the best ways to share the benefit you get is to rate and review it at Stitcher and other sites by clicking the stars or completing the ratings form, by clicking thumbs up and leaving a comment on YouTube, or liking and sharing the podcast on social media. To review the podcast within iTunes, simply open iTunes to the podcast, click on Ratings and Reviews, then write a review. On behalf of Patience, and until next time, thanks once more for listening. It is our hope that this podcast will guide you on your own online success journey.